I think the demands on CEOs these days are hardly believable, the scale of what is expected of them in terms of outward communication, both to their customers and also their internal stakeholders, their staff. Never mind actually running the show. I find it extraordinary what we expect of them, and I think it's becoming more impossible as time goes on. I think it's pretty dangerous, social media, for CEOs to take a very close personal interest in that. I'll never forget Philip Clark's first day at Tesco, when you had this sad little tweet about him sort of being in a lay-by on the M40, being really excited about going to see one of his stores in Buckinghamshire or something, and it was just greeted by widespread mirth. I think he tweeted twice after that before he gave up. So, and also, if city shareholders, if they see CEOs spending their whole time on Twitter and Facebook, going to wonder who's actually running the company and why. They're very difficult people to sort of persuade of the value of those sorts of things. But I think the authenticity thing, whatever that means, it's a word that's bandied around a lot at the moment, is becoming increasingly important. And if you look at Justin King, for example, when he was at Sainsbury's, when you sat down with him for an hour, he had everything at his fingertips. He kind of, you could see he sort of felt it when they went through the sort of the horse meat thing, or rather they didn't get involved in the horse meat thing. He was proud of that, but he said why it was, what it was to do with their culture that had prevented something like that occurring. The authenticity thing is really important, and it's not an easy thing to manufacture that either. I think you've got to, if you're new to the job, you've got to rely on the professionals to tell you where your strengths are and get someone to give you a pretty honest, objective valuation of how you play to the various audiences. I mean, clearly you can be helped and trained in certain aspects of outward communication, but you've got the kind of naturals out there who find it much easier and those who find it very difficult. And it depends entirely on what sort of business you're running as well. There are industries like, I don't know, Glencore, for example. Maybe it's not entirely appropriate that Glassenberg's out there kind of telling the world what they're trying to do and why they're in the mess they are at the moment. But if you've got a kind of big consumer-facing business like, I don't know, EasyJet, for example, where Carolyn McCall went in there 5 years ago and did what she's done. She was pretty good at it, but she rations herself and doesn't do too much. She's also particularly good, I think, at the internal thing as well. If you talk to her people, they really like her. They feel that she understands what they're doing day in, day out. One of the best internal practitioners I've ever come across is John Lewis, and they're pretty amazing because you've got that triumvirate. You've got Charlie at the top, and then you've got the two below him. So talking to their various constituencies, maybe slightly kind of competitive, being a champion of their particular business, and they're really good at it, But they've got that culture that runs all the way through them, and everybody understands what that organisation means and what role they play in it. But the other thing about John Lewis, which is quite interesting, is that if you work that partnership model, you've got to be ready for argument. They're a pretty disputatious lot as well. They say what they think, and everybody thinks it's all a bit kind of nice and fluffy and cooperative, and they're not like that at all. It's, they're not the easiest lot in the world to manage, I wouldn't imagine. Well, the last big boss I did in Europe was the chairman of Audi, who I met the week before last, who had a few questions to answer. And he's sort of, I don't think Germans find this sort of thing terribly easy. He was better at Audi because actually he's not an engineer in the classic sort of German industrialist model. He studied business at university, so he was slightly more sort of authentic and human. But even so, from my point of view as a journalist, asking questions about what they've endured over the last 3 months, I don't think he found that easy. I think Martin's unique. He's been doing it a very long time, and he knows exactly what his shtick is and how the year runs. We see him at Davos on Channel 4 News in January every year. and we have these tropes about bath-shaped recoveries and all the rest of it. I mean, Martin's a reflection of being kind of quite good at it, being sparing about how you do it, and also having a pretty unusual global outlook as well. There aren't that many British CEOs who sort of have got their fingers on what's going on in South America, in China, in Russia, and in the States. But it wouldn't do any harm, would it? I think anxiety, a worry that it'll all go wrong. I mean, if you try and go out there and pitch yourself, you get tripped up, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's once bitten, twice shy. So the media in this country is not accommodating. They're tough and questioning, which is why something like the VW scandal would have been less likely to, I think, to occur in this country than it did in Germany, where the media is sort of supine and didn't ask difficult questions. I don't think in the end the media in this country does business any harm, and I think it's good to be kept on its toes and honest and explaining what it's there for and what it's doing. But we could do with a few more business leaders with an international profile, I think. I think comfort ultimately must be the right thing. You've got to work out what it is you're good at, and if you find that sort of outward communication thing difficult, work on it. But if you're not a natural and you're always feeling awkward and uneasy, then don't overdo it. There's no, you've got plenty to do these days actually running the show and keeping everything going. And then to choose your opportunities carefully, to think about them and take advice from your people about which ones to do and when, and prepare yourself, and try and be natural and authentic. I think, one of the things that King, when he was at Sainsbury's, was good at was being kind of human. Actually being a mixture of kind of blokish and open about it, whilst being kind of articulate as well, and sort of really, being behind the outfit that he was running.